Man has climbed Mount Everest, gone to the bottom of the ocean. He's fired rockets at the moon, split the atom, achieved miracles in every field of human endeavour, except podcasting. Well, okay, maybe that's not entirely true, but here at Diminishing Returns, we try our very best to achieve miracles in the fields of sequels, prequels, reboots, and remakes of well-known movies and franchises by talking about them in depth before pitching our own ideas for continuing stories to those films. Today we're continuing our film-by-film dissection of every Bond movie by discussing Goldfinger, the third 007 adventure to star Sean Connery, who becomes embroiled in a plan by a dastardly villain named Goldfinger to break into Fort Knox. On this quintessential Bond formula movie, our hero is joined by classically named Bond girl Pussy Galore and silent razor-rimmed hat-wearing Oddjob, rounding out the assortment of definitive Bond film archetypes introduced in this adventure. But just how much does Goldfinger deserve its title as the quintessential Bond adventure? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at today. The following podcast contains spoilers for Goldfinger, Thunderball, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and Spectre. Hello, Bond fans, I'm Calvin.
I'm Sol.
Hello, Bond fans. I'm Alan.
So yeah, we're back on Bond again today as we work our way through every film in the series. So Goldfinger is obviously the sort of what many people would call the quintessential Bond film. It's like if Dr. No and From Russia with Love were the start of something, it's all more or less solidified here. Do you agree?
I guess so.
Yeah, definitely came across to me. Yeah. This really felt like, in terms of that first generation of Bond, that this was the classic Bond.
Yeah, I mean, as a Bond skeptic, as you've labelled myself and Alan, I'll say this is the last one out of the films that I've seen that I think is like a coherent, decent film. Yeah,
wait a minute, you saw like Up to Octopussy?
Yes.
Oh wow!
And I've also seen the Pierce Brosnan one with the see-through car and Madonna.
Oh, right.
That's the worst one.
That is
Fair
a
enough
really
with that
bad
one.
film, yeah. But out of the ones I've seen, this is the last one that's kind of, well, this and Dr. No are the only two that I think are like passable, basically.
Oh, that's interesting. Because obviously they got a new director in. Terence Young didn't come back. They got Guy Hamilton, who brought his own sort of sense of humour to the film. And his attitude towards it was all very irreverent in interviews and stuff, where he says, you know what, this is a load of nonsense, so let's just have fun with it and have these big outrageous... Yeah. That was his...
It's just... because I just thought it was... Well, I think it's very dull considering that was the approach they took.
No, I think it's definitely got a sense of humour about it. I mean, it's still got to take it seriously. But
it's kind of funny when he drops the bar of gold on the golf pitch and the ground goes like wonky. It's like,
is that
weird.
a joke?
No, it's just shot weirdly and it makes me laugh.
Oh, what? Why is it shot weirdly?
The way the ground moves, it looks so like...
Oh, that's one of my favourite moments in the film. I think it's so nice that, like... Because it's to prove that the gold is real, isn't it? And it's like, it's
like
that heavy that
is, you know, no problem with that.
Those greens are very well maintained, so it'll be very moist.
But yeah, no, the director's attitude was just... Which I prefer, because I think we talked about this a little bit in our Dr. No podcast, where I mentioned how the director of the first film, Terence Young, almost sounds to be sort of... He pretends that he's aware that he was making something a bit cheesy and corny, when actually you're not sure if he really was aware of that.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy sort of knew, you know, I know what I'm doing, and yeah, we're going to start off the film with him like coming out of the sea with like a pelican on his head or whatever it is. It's like a duck, isn't it? And then, you know, he unzips the wetsuit. He's there in a perfectly dry tuxedo. He immediately goes and kisses a lady, blows up a drug supply, has a bit of a fist fight. Uses the woman as a human shield, which is a very Connery thing to do.
She was setting him up, though, to be fair.
She was.
Am I right in thinking this is the first one where Bond outright rapes a woman?
No, that's the first one.
There is Yeah, there is that.
It's
very
an outright
awkward
sexual
scene.
assault. Sorry, it's not quite.
You know what? Let's just talk about it now. Let's not beat around the bush, because I know that Sol, you're desperate to talk about this. So here we go. Let's have it.
Well, it's this one, isn't it? She's
Yes.
she's there, and then he forces himself on her, and then it's. Have you seen Straw Dogs, Calvin?
No, I haven't.
One of the most unpleasant scenes in that film, which is a wonderful film. It's it's an exploration of the line between good and evil, and one of the most unpleasant sequences to watch is a rape scene where a woman is basically attacked by a kind of childhood crush, I guess. That she hasn't seen for however many years, and now she's back in her hometown again. And
Right.
he forces himself upon her, and she's, not enjoying it. But about halfway through, she sort of starts to enjoy it, and it's an incredibly controversial moment. But like I say, it's the artistic merit behind it is because the whole film is about this grey area between good and evil, and at what point an act of evil ceases to be. I don't know. The main character's a pacifist who is forced into violence to protect a mentally disabled man from being murdered, and it's all it's a horrific scene to watch, but it works within the context of the film. My point is that scene is really uncomfortable, one of the most unpleasant things I can think of in any film that I've ever seen. And the same exact thing pretty much happens in Goldfinger.
Not quite, because in Goldfinger she's a lesbian.
Okay.
So that's
she needed
one
to be
difference.
cured. Obviously, was the.
That's pretty much where they go with it. Yeah. The attitude is that of course you're a lesbian. You haven't kissed Bond yet. God, he'd turn anyone, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Thing is,
well, they should have him kissing.
Some
a
women
straight
just
man
play hard to get. All right, so that's how it goes.
That is the attitude. I mean, that's the thing. It's weird.
Do you know what? If they could have played it a bit more like, not that she's a lesbian or that she's not interested in whatsoever. If they'd played it a bit more like, hey, I'm a strong, independent woman, so I'm not going to give in to you, and he charms her, and kind of there's a sense of not force, but she's playing hard to get, and he's pushing her into it.
Yeah.
That it might have worked. It could have worked, and if you get the context right. But you don't get any of that. She's not interested whatsoever.
Yeah.
They have a bit of flirty judo fight, but apart from that,
and that only comes about because he tries it on with her.
Do you think he's done that with Moneypenny when cameras went wrong?
Moneypenny wants it. Moneypenny definitely wants it. But yeah. No, I mean, that scene, it's really uncomfortable to watch. It's certainly when I watched this as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, being 9-10 years old, you don't think of it like that. But now watching it as an adult, and I think it's because the music as well is so... And it's like really like light-hearted, and we're supposed to be like, oh, isn't this lovely? That he's like literally, there's that close-up where he's like forcing himself on her, and she's got her hands like on him, and she's like struggling, her head's like going back and forth, and it's I
was only about 19, 18 when I saw Goldfinger for the first time, and I certainly wasn't as enlightened as I am now, so to speak. But even then, I found it very jarring. That sequence, it's one of the scenes that's stuck with me from the franchise. That Bond being offered a delicatessen in stainless steel, and no, I think it's just those two, to be honest.
Okay, well, my first note was, what's this magical wetsuit supposed to be made of? Because it looks like velvet. It's not, and it's obviously supposed to be waterproof. It's not a wetsuit because his tuxedo is perfectly dry underneath it.
Yes.
So what is this?
It's probably a gadget
it's special
from
Q branch. Yeah. That's
They
how you
wouldn't
explain anything.
they wouldn't spend that kind of money on shit for the military and what have you. But Bond is, he's a special case. He gets
I do always wonder that about like how like Bond always has like a Rolex or an Omega watch or whatever. It's like, and it's always a Q branch one, so it can always fire a laser or something else. And it's like, have Q branch like, do they actually just buy them in from Rolex? Like that would be so expensive if you're equipping all these agents with.
I think it's a product placement deal that they have with Rolex, so that all their spies are wearing swanky watches, so that like anyone watching them, like they do it with everything.
Spies shouldn't be seen.
Yeah, so... but it's like you see this guy, this really cool guy. He's shagged so many women that they're gonna see him like shaving at some point in the toilet,
as she does in Goldfinger.
So
yes.
they do like product placement deals with like razors and snazzy cars and stuff, because they're like, look, this car. It's doing some some sketchy undercover stuff, but it's probably going to end up on the news in like a spectacular car chase at some point. So just give it for free.
It's really the broad product placement, actually, because this was like the first film where there was a story about on the set one of the producers, Harry Saltzman. This is before like product placement was really a thing in films. Okay. But one of the producers, like just like when there is that scene of Bond shaving in the thing, the producer just went up and like took away the prop shaving can and put down a Gillette one, and didn't really sort of tell anyone. And the director was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And the producer was trying to help someone out, and then he'd get money for it or whatever. And then the director was like, "No, we're not doing that." So.
Did Bond as a franchise like pioneer the concept of product placement in film then? Because I know it's certainly it's one of the worst offenders nowadays, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
But...
I mean, I think around this time, I think it was early 60s where it sort of started becoming a thing. Like, certainly I think real products had existed in films beforehand, where people like have a Coca-Cola or whatever.
Well, before that, they didn't do product placement. They just sort of stopped the film and go, "I like to smoke Lucky Strike. It's a smooth taste."
Yes.
I guess they just got subtler.
Yeah. Whereas by the time of License to Kill, they just have Timothy Dalton like quite visibly like fondling a pack of Marlboros. Like.
I did like, when he comes out of the wetsuit and he's wearing the tuxedo, and then he goes into this like little cabana bar. Which really reminded me of Casablanca, like, because the suit was very Rick Blaine, that is the same suit. But didn't he seem really overdressed? Like he's got this wetsuit on and he's dressed underneath it. And it's like, oh, that's good. But then he's like completely inappropriately dressed for the party. It sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. Well, that's just what Brits abroad were like back in the day, I think.
My next note is reflection in eye. Fuck off.
It is very silly, isn't it? Where he's kissing the girl, and then he's like looking into her eyes, and in the reflection he sees the assailant approaching behind him with a bludgeon. It's
that was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very, very silly.
I did like the locations and stuff like that. There's some really great visuals, and like just particularly right at the beginning when we're setting up Miami, and. Well, I like how they just have a plane going by with "Welcome to Miami" or whatever it was. It's like, oh, right, okay, that's where we are then. Well, I guess that's better than just putting it on screen.
How else do you get that exposition out?
But then I really like there's like a plane shot, and it circles round the hotel, and reveals a pool, and you see someone diving, and then it cuts to them landing, and we're on location with the characters. I thought that worked really nicely. It was a grand entrance, but it was so seamless. Yeah, that's great filmmaking, that, isn't it? In terms of these kind of films, that Hollywood film.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, I would say that the quality of filmmaking certainly stepped up a bit from the previous two to this one.
And it was later on where are they, in the Alps or something like that, where they're driving around the winding roads.
Yes,
that was also such beautiful scenery. It was really well shot.
Yeah. Now this one does have some really lovely locations in it.
Okay, so when they're at the hotel, and Felix Leiter goes and talks to him, Connery slaps that girl on the arse so hard that he strains his bicep. In that scene,
I've never picked up on that.
He goes, "Man talk," and then like turns around, slaps her on the arse, and then like rubs his arm with his other hand, like was like, I overdid that a bit.
And
yeah,
she's
that was
just strutting away.
just
like,
a beautifully
nothing.
1960s moment, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
This is like is Connery's Bond, like in a nutshell. This film, just like sort of slapping the women around.
interesting one. This James Bond doesn't like the Beatles. It turns out.
Yeah, it's an odd pop culture
remind me?
reference when
He says something like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. It's like listening to the Beatles without wearing earmuffs."
That's very in character, though, don't you think? Because
it's very in character. It's just a bizarre bit of pop culture
Yeah.
referencing for Bond.
Yeah.
It's like
Well,
that
it's
never normally exists.
Yeah,
in
he's
movies.
a cranky old guy from a different time who would have been threatened by modern music. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
He has that Bond, he has to stay down with the kids though, because he has to shag all these women who are only about 20 years old.
Well, I'm sure Daniel.
So he has to.
I bet you
he has to
Daniel
keep
Craig's Bond
down with the trends.
is a fan of the Beatles.
No, Rolling Stones, man, come on.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he likes both. I'm sure.
No, you can't like both. You're one or the other. That's how it works.
Do you reckon he's Oasis or Blur, Calvin?
Ooh. Daniel Craig?
Yeah,
Oasis.
you're right. I think he'd enjoy the rough and tumble of the Gallaghers.
I've got a question for you here, Calvin.
Okay.
I'd like you to explain to me in scientific terms what is skin suffocation.
Well, according to the film, epidermal suffocation, as I believe they refer to it, is common amongst what was it, belly dancers
Belly
or something,
dancers, yeah.
who paint themselves and then they die because their skin is not getting enough oxygen.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Yeah.
So Bond didn't drown in his super tight wetsuit earlier on in the film.
No,
because he still
but-
had a patch out. He had his face out or something. You just have to leave
Isn't-
a small patch at the base of the spine.
Oh, so your skin can breathe.
I love that.
Of course.
I love that Bond was unconscious for all that time. It's like I would have thought that skin suffocation, if it existed, would have taken a while.
It
Presuming you can
exists
still breathe.
in insects. Insects breathe
Oh.
through their body. Do you think Ian Fleming just got a bit confused? As a plot device, it's not a bad concept, except that
There's a visual.
it only
that
really
works.
plays it only really plays if you think your audience is stupid. But then maybe in 1964, before the internet, you could just kind of get away with that sort of thing and be like, "Oh, did you know about this nonsense?" And everyone would go, "Oh, really?
Well,
Okay."
if they are getting away with him taking off a wetsuit and there's a perfectly dry tuxedo underneath it, and you buy into or him seeing a reflection in a girl's eye, like this is
Yeah,
in
that's
that
worse.
on that same vein. I think.
Well,
I
well,
think you just go with it.
I also put here, did they restrain her to paint her, or because I imagine
Yeah.
it takes a long time, and there's no paint on the bed, so she wasn't
Yes.
struggling. She's not tied down.
So they're not just dunk her in a vat.
I want
with-
to.
No. Dip her
Well, I
in
don't
by
know,
her
exactly.
hair and then pull her out again.
Did they bring that with them, or
I
what?
don't know.
It gives us an amazing visual.
I think there's more
That's why
questions than answers
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, you just have to buy it and roll
It
with
is
it.
it is a great visual. I'll give it that. It does feel like something from a time that wouldn't play nowadays. Everyone would just be straight
true.
on their phones and hang on.
One thing I noticed that Bond has to cheat to beat Goldfinger at golf. It doesn't feel very Bond to me. Shouldn't he have just outplayed him? And then Goldfinger tried to cheat, and then they have to get around
I
that.
don't
or
know.
something like that. I don't know. That's not. It's not painting him as a bad guy.
I think.
Well,
Bond,
Goldfinger did try to cheat.
I think Bond is.
Oh yeah, he did, didn't he?
Bond doesn't strike me like he's got any issues with cheating. He seems like someone who.
I know, but it just didn't seem very heroic. It was
Bond
sort of
strikes
really-
me like the kind of guy who would cheat at a game of Monopoly with his own kids and get really angry if they were doing better than him and just throw the board across the room and you can play with your mother and storm out of the room.
I noticed the Ben-Hur reference in the car chase bit.
Oh yes, when the thing comes out of the shredder.
Yeah, and
You know,
then it rips the whole side of the car apart.
Yes.
And he pulls out and he goes, "Oh, both tyres burst. That's terribly unlucky." It's like, what about the giant gash up the fucking side of the car?
No, exactly. It's ridiculous. This is, of course, when he's followed Goldfinger and Oddjob to Switzerland and bumps into the sister of the girl who got covered in gold paint. We haven't really talked about Goldfinger and Oddjob yet, but as far as Bond villains go, I mean, I'll say it, Goldfinger is my very favourite Bond villain. I think he encapsulates everything that a Bond villain should be. How did you two feel about them?
I like Goldfinger. I'll tell you why. It's not a politically motivated villain. He's just like, it is like pure greed or whatever, and it's like a slightly obsessive thing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come across as like really bizarre or maniacal like, say, Dr. No does. And I think it's something we can all, like, greed is something we can all identify with to a certain level. But what I really liked about it was the reveal of the sort of twist of the plan, that he's not stealing the gold at all. He's just taking it out of action so that his own goes up in value.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's quite a nice little twist. That's quite clever, you know? I really like that. And apparently that's not in the book. They changed that in the film. Because in the book it's just like he steals it and it's like, nah, it's just completely unrealistic. So we need to change that. So I really like that. It just gave it a nice little twist.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think his plan is really quite ingenious.
Because, it seems a bit more clever and interesting than just a general evil scheme.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert for the next film, Thunderball, the villain's plan basically comes down to they steal a nuclear bomb and want $100 million, and that's it. Whereas I think this one is a bit more, like, I like how it's seeded throughout the whole film, and you're with Bond picking up little clues here and there as to what the eventual goal is.
I think Goldfinger comes across as quite a normal guy, which really helps, like, as opposed to Dr. No, who's much more of a cartoonish villain.
Yeah.
And then From Russia with Love, it's all just this very kind of Soviet thing, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, he comes across as just like a normal guy, but with these evil schemes going on in the background.
Can I ask you something? Did you know that this is not Goldfinger's real voice in the film, the actor's real voice?
Yeah, I did, but it's a lot better dubbed than some of the older ones I've been. Yeah, but it worked a lot better.
Yeah, because apparently the actor could barely speak English.
Which again, why are you hiring someone to speak English dialogue when they can't speak English?
This is it.
Did Gert Froh bring some physicality to Goldfinger that no one else could possibly have done, and so they just had to have him?
I think they his agent sold him, saying like, "Oh yeah, no, he can definitely speak English. He can definitely." I think the director saw him in a film in which he played a child molester. And it might have even been a modern German remake of the Peter Lorre M. I can't confirm that, but he saw him in that and was like, "Oh, this guy's great. Does he speak English? Oh yeah, he speaks English." And then he met him, and he was like, he knew a few phrases, which managed to get him by. And then it turned out when they started filming, he couldn't speak a word of it. So, apparently he wouldn't even sort of speak it. They just told him just speak quickly and make little mouth movements. And then it'll dub fine. So, like, Anna Blackman, who played Pussy Galore, said that, they sat down to do a scene, and he started talking, and it was just like, and that was it. And she was like, "Oh, right, okay, well, he stopped talking, so I guess I'll say my line." And that was basically
helps
how
the acting process, doesn't it? Really natural.
Yeah.
As for Oddjob, I think it works really well in that kind of slightly bizarre henchman category. It's just enough bigger than life to work without going too silly. The bowler hat's a bit... No, it's not a bowler hat, is it? But the hat is a bit silly. Like a razor blade hat. But it just about gets away with it, I think. And the fact that he's mute and all that, it just sort of adds enough character without having to deal with actual character development.
Yeah.
My next note was about the sister, Tilly Masterson, is it?
Tilly Masterson, yes. Jill Masterson's sister.
My note here was, this girl isn't interested in Bond. She must be a lesbian. I bet he cures her. Oh no, she's dead. So unfortunately, she died before he got a chance to cure her.
Killed with the hat without an ounce of blood on her. He runs over to her and is like, this is after the car chase and the ejector seat, which is a classic moment.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, sorry, the ejector seat comes after Tilly is killed. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, when he's captured. Yeah.
Yes.
But it would have been better if he'd like thrown the hat and it would have like exploded into gold dust and like coated her. And that would have been like a gold bomb. That would have been a better weapon.
Yeah.
That'd be very expensive.
I don't think you understand this man's love for gold.
But then, love of gold, yes, because then, like, shortly after the ejector seat, we get probably the most iconic scene in the film: the laser going up to Bond's knackers while he's strapped to gold.
I mean, it's an iconic scene, is it? And from what I understand, like the laser thing was, at that point, completely sort of unknown, futuristic sci-fi thing.
Yes.
So I guess it would have had quite a cool impression at the time.
Yeah.
Or maybe it just seemed really unrealistic and stupid. but yeah, it works really nice, isn't it?
It's just the classic Bond being tortured by the villain. Yeah, this is the one that like all the others try to sort of ape.
I like that Goldfinger. Well, the classic line, "I expect you to die." He's really not interested in getting any information out of him. He's just like, "No, I'm just going to kill you in a sort of horrible way."
Yeah, I know. I love that he just goes about his business in the background as well. Like he's not like sat there waiting for him to be like torn apart. It's like, I just got to get on with it now. Actually, and it's only because of like Bond overhearing a little bit of information earlier on that saves his life. Like when he says, "No, I know about Operation Grand Slam."
I like that though. That's really. I think that's really cool, like espionage stuff, where he's like he's faking it out a little bit. He's taking a little bit of information and trying to play it. That's really good. That's what it should be all about, really.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. And it's sort of fun again because as an audience, we don't know what Operation Grand Slam is. We just know that Bond's heard it, and he's just sort of improvising along the way, and we're with him as he does it. And it's really cool.
My next note is, why is Bond trying to have sex with this old woman?
What?
Because Honor Blackman is 20 years too old to be a Bond girl.
Oh my god! No.
And I mean that in the standards of its own world. Obviously, I haven't got a problem with 42-year-old women being
up until Monica Bellucci in Spectre, Honor Blackman was the oldest Bond girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Older than Sean Connery, in fact.
That's disgusting. Is that the only time where Bond shagged someone older than him?
Could well be until right? Spectre. Yeah.
Well, how old is Monica Bellucci?
She's like 50 something.
How old Daniel Craig?
48.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Very modern of him. It's 21st century Bond.
But like obviously Goldfinger is like the quintessential villain. Surely Pussy Galore is the quintessential Bond girl. Do you agree? I mean, she's a bit tougher than the quintessential Bond girl.
She's too strong to be a Bond girl. The Bond girls are always just these like whiny damsels in distress usually, and the more modern ones they make them a bit fiercer, don't they? But I don't particularly associate that with early Bond.
It's almost a disappointment that they had to crowbar in the pair of them having sex, because I think I could buy that he would win over Pussy Galore without having to have sex with her. And, looking at this with, modern eyes, if she'd have just been a lesbian, leader of an all-female team of pilots... I don't think she even has
to be a lesbian. I think it's acceptable for someone just not to want to have sex with Bond. even if they're attracted to men, that's okay.
Yeah. Because I think she's so cool and tough on her own. Maybe it's just because Honor Blackman. I think she's a really charismatic performer and easily probably the best of the early Bond girls. And the name, of course, she has that name.
Not a strong competition, is it? Yeah, well, we've been over this, isn't it? Pussy's not a name, so and neither is Galore for that matter. So
they were going to call her Kitty Galore originally, but then
I mean that would have been a lot better, wouldn't it? Like there's a degree of subtlety to that.
Well, they got away because they were afraid of the censors because they were like, they're never going to let us have Pussy Galore. But then they managed to get the Times. I think it was the New York Times. The producers of the film managed to get them to print an article about the film or the book or something like that, in which they said the Bond girl is Pussy Galore, and they used that as an excuse to the censors. Like, oh well, if the New York Times can print it, then why can't we have it in the film?
I thought you were going to say it was
well, they just
that thing where you go in with like something much worse than what you actually want, and then the censors say, "All right, you've got to tone it down a bit," and then they just never came back with a problem, and they were like, "Oh, okay, I guess."
Does it get worse than Pussy Galore? Like, unless it's like vaginas.
No,
Well, they could. The thing is, they could have called her like Fanny Liquor, right? That is because Fanny is at least a name, an old-fashioned one, and Liquor could be like German or something. Like, you know, it's a lot more realistic name than Pussy Galore.
yeah.
Spell it with an H. Right. Oh yeah, what I was going to say about Pussy Galore, the character in general, and this sort of comes up again at the end, but is it clear how much she knows? Because at first she's the personal pilot of some rich guy. She's just doing a job, but then obviously she knows she's dropping gas on these people because she switches it out.
Yes.
But it's not like Bond tells her, "Oh, by the way, your boss is doing this evil scheme," and so she turns against him. She just does it because Bond shags her, and then right at the very end, when Goldfinger hijacks the plane, she's flying for him. So is she still working for Goldfinger? And then he dies, so she shags Bond again. Like, what's going on with Pussy Galore? Is it... Whose side is she on?
The ending is its own little weird thing. I'm not quite sure what's going on at the ending. I think it's fairly clear until then that she's aware of what the plan is, but she's been told a sort of more sanitized version of it.
Yeah, maybe she knows there's some no good stuff going on, but quite not the extent.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of the very ending, it's very unclear why she's... I mean, obviously she's piloting the plane because Bond needs to sleep with a woman at the end, and that's it. But it's not quite clear if she's in cahoots with Goldfinger at the end, or if he, like, I don't know, like, kidnapped her to make her fly the plane. It's all very weird.
But he must know by that point that she turned on him, so... Wouldn't he have just killed her? Or even if he'd managed to get his hands on her and then was like, okay, you're going to fly, I'm going to hijack this plane, you're the only pilot I've got around, so I need to keep you alive. Just throw in a line of dialogue or something to explain that. Because otherwise it's just gets too weird.
Oh yeah, because she flies off in the helicopter with him, doesn't she, when Fort Knox is being attacked.
I don't know. Why is she even there? She's flying over the fields, isn't she? With the...
She's at the end when they take the bomb into Fort Knox. She's outside in a helicopter. She flies Goldfinger there in a helicopter.
Oh, okay.
And then at the end, when the military are coming to take it back, she just flies off with him, presumably.
So she's still, but he's not going. He doesn't go like, "What the fuck, man? What happened to our gas?" I guess she just goes, "Well, it's nothing to do with me. I just set him on the plane, so I don't know anything about it." So maybe he doesn't know that she's.
Maybe she just slept with him and won him over, because that's apparently the logic that this film is working on. That you sleep with someone and then, all right, then yeah, I see your point of view now.
Well, before we get to all that bit though, the scene where Bond overhears Goldfinger explaining the entire plan to some mafia guys.
Oh yes.
Okay, it's all exposition, but it completely undercuts it, and we have this whole journey where we see this guy taken to a car crusher. It takes about 15 minutes, this whole thing. Completely unnecessary, because he just kills them all anyway.
Yeah.
Why is he trying to talk them into his plan?
And
then just kills them all.
Because he had that amazing billiard table built that flipped over, and there was a map.
He says, "I've had this made now. I want to."
Yes, it's like, nah, I need to do this, and yeah. You know, that is the bit that always like really slows the film down for me, when we have to like follow this mobster around as he is shot and then crushed, because it's not even like, oh, he wanted an especially terrible death for that one that, you know, didn't stick around for the gas. It's like, oh, they just shoot him. Like, if they'd put him into the car crusher and he was alive, then I'd have kind of bought it like, oh yeah, Goldfinger really wanted him to suffer. But
there's just none of it was necessary. He killed them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why didn't they just leave him there and gas
They're
him
very the filmmaker, like when you listen to the commentary and stuff on the DVD, the filmmakers are all very much like, yeah, you hope that the audience aren't paying so much attention that they realise these things, and just kind of go with it and think it's going to be explained later, and then it isn't. But yeah, it was just it's all basically a massive contrivance to have Goldfinger explain his elaborate plan to the audience,
which was interesting. Like I was just curious. Are the roads around Fort Knox actually called Bullion Boulevard and Gold Vault Road? Because if they are, I want to know the town planners who let that go through. But yeah, I like how you can coordinate everyone. Just go, okay, when these planes go over, just fall over just when they're about near you.
Yeah, like all these thousands of people. Like, yeah.
Plus, what was the point? Because Goldfinger wasn't there to witness it. Like, you need to, when he arrives, you need to have everyone laying down, pretend to be unconscious. But you don't have to actually watch them fall over in live time.
Well, the pilots were looking. The Pussy Galore's Flying Circus, they were...
Yeah, but they're Pussy Galore's girls, aren't they? They do what she says.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. How far are they in on this? Do they know what's going on?
Well,
we
never
crop
know.
Dusting?
You'd think they'd be... in on it, considering they're apparently quite close to her.
And my other thing about all that was, what exactly was the plan that the CIA were trying to do? Because whatever it was, it didn't work. Because they still got into the vault and planted the bomb, and if it wasn't for Bond being still alive and in there, they wouldn't have got to it in time. So
yeah.
What exactly was the plan? Just of letting him in.
It does feel like like it would have been better to act like before they got in the gate, like just as before they actually laser the door open. That's probably the time to strike. I don't know. It's another. Did they need to wait for him to like the proof that he definitely had the bomb there?
No. Well,
No.
what more do you want? Like, are they worried about? Oh, we might not be able to pin this on him and call. We better let him go right to the point where he puts the nuclear weapon in the vault.
Yeah, maybe. Can I just say that my favourite moment in the entire film is when they all do start waking up. The bomb has been activated. Goldfinger's outside with Mr. Ling, and he's like, "Oh, great, here we are." And then he sees in the distance that the American troops have like started, taking the place back, and he like runs off and like immediately closes the vault and locks everyone in, including Oddjob.
Yeah.
And then he takes off his jacket and like turns his hat inside out, and he's got like an American general uniform, and then he takes out his like gold revolver and just like runs out there and shoots Mr. Ling like immediately. And then it's just how quick he is with it, because it's literally like he sees the Americans taking down his guys and he's like, "Oh right, okay, yep, here we go." And
he's obviously prepared for this possibility.
Yes.
He knows what he's doing.
I just love it when he turns out the jacket inside out, and it's like,
oh
and
no,
then,
gonna have to kill everyone.
Yeah, it's like, I just love it. And then Obviously Oddjob and Bond and the other guy, Kish, Mr. Kish.
He dies straight away anyway.
Yes, he's gonna go and deactivate the bomb, but Oddjob, so loyal, decides to kill him instead.
You got a nice fight sequence with Oddjob, and that works for what it is.
Yeah,
pretty cool looking death. Using his own weapon against him and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's very cool. But brilliant death for Goldfinger, surely, getting sucked out of the plane. Yeah. And then, of course, Bond manages to parachute into a lovely looking location with Pussy Galore, and even though the authorities are looking for them, he decides that they're just going to keep on having sex under the parachute.
No
Great
time to be
ending.
rescued.
Yes.
Does every Bond film end with him canoodling and sort of like
not the one where his wife dies.
It's been a while since I watched it. Is his actual name Goldfinger? Is he like Henry Goldfinger or something?
No, it's Auric, as in Goldick.
Come on, man. What's that about? I watched the new.
Does Auric?
It's a real name. It's a real name.
I mean, well,
What, Auric?
No, Goldfinger's like actually named like one of the screenwriters of going a bit obscure here, the Piranha 3D. Is Pete Goldfinger.
I guess it's like, Thomas Crapper inventing the toilet. If you're called Goldfinger, you're gonna, gravitate towards gold.
Well, that's you're gonna kill ladies with gold.
Yeah, and if you're called Pussy Galore, you're gonna gravitate towards.
Well, before we move on to the pitches, just broadly, like Alan, do you like the film? How do you feel about the film? Other than the specific...
Yeah, I'm curious, Alan.
Yeah.
You've given it quite positive comments.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it's obviously of a particular mould, but yeah, it is, like we say, it's a sort of quintessential example of that kind of film, so it works. I mean, of all the things I've just pointed out, there are kind of problems with it, but...
Your favourite of the three that you've reviewed for the podcast so far?
Yeah, I think so. It works the best as a kind of complete film. And it's easy. It's an easy, fun watch, which is what Bond films are supposed to be.
I think I prefer Doctor No, to be honest. But as I say, this one is like, it's one of the Bond films I've seen that actually like gets away with what it's doing. I don't like dislike it. Calvin, in case anyone listening isn't intimately familiar with you and your Bond opinions, how do you feel about it? Where does it sit on your Bond rankings?
Oh, very, very highly. Yeah, probably, certainly top 5. Probably my favourite Connery Bond film, certainly. It is just a perfect blend of all the classic ingredients, and I think it's the fact that all the supporting casting, I think Connery's at his best. He's not quite, winking at the camera, but he has a knowing look throughout, and
it certainly is, as you say, it certainly is a kind of culmination of everything they were kind of setting out to do with the series up until a point, and arguably for a lot of the films since.
Totally.
Before we go any further, I just want to interject here with I've made a little Bond quiz. More for Calvin, to be honest with you, Saul, because I've had to go pretty deep with this. Knowing Calvin's, in-depth knowledge and self-proclaimed expertise on the matter, I've tried to come up with some questions that are a bit deeper.
Okay.
And it's more about like the production side of things, like the surrounding Bond, rather than the films themselves.
Okay. Goldfinger, especially, or the whole series?
No, not particularly. No, just sort of general Bond questions that have I've been, as I was doing research, things that came up. Okay, so
play along at home and see if you can beat James Bond superfan.
That was it. Yeah, well, that's what
Calvin
I thought.
Dyson.
Exactly, yeah. Because I know we've got a lot of Bond fans listening, so it'll be interesting to see if they can get them. So don't answer too quickly, Calvin. Give them a chance to think about it. Okay, so let's just sort of go at them here.
Right.
This is a tough one. Okay.
Oh God.
Which film has 3 actors who have played Blofeld in its cast?
3 actors who played Blofeld in its cast.
So let's start with the basics. Tell us who are the actors who played Blofeld.
Well, Donald Pleasance, Telly Savalas, Charles Gray, Anthony Dawson, Eric Pullman. I can't remember the name of the guy from For Your Eyes Only. But that's technically not Blofeld.
What about the unofficial one as well?
Max von Sydow?
Yeah, that's important because he's in this question.
Ooh, okay. What film has had 3?
So
Blofelds in it?
there is a film in which 3 of those actors appear.
Oh my God!
It's not a
This
Bond
isn't
film,
Bond.
right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. I had to go deep. This is Bond. This came because
movie?
I saw this came about because I was flicking through channels on something and I went onto this film and it was Donald Pleasance and Charles Gray dressed as Nazis having a conversation. And I was like, what the fuck's this? And it was a film called Night of the Generals, I think it is.
That classic,
about these,
yeah.
and they're both Nazi generals. But it made me think like,
0 points to Calvin.
Well, it made me think that actors. The actors who played Blofeld. I wonder if they've what they've been in together. And I actually found something where 3 of them are in, so that's where it came from, basically.
Oh, that's not the answer.
No, that's not. That's just 2 of them in that one. This has got 3 of them in, and it is a famous film.
Ooh.
It's a famous film. It's not.
I'm trying to think of what Donald.
I don't think you'll have seen it. To be honest.
Oh.
I haven't seen it, so you know.
Oh, what is it?
It is a religious epic,
Oh.
and it is. You obviously don't know it. I was just gonna say it's the greatest story ever told,
Oh.
which is the story of Jesus,
Ah.
and it
Does
stars
Max von Sydow play-
Max von Sydow as Jesus,
Oh, really?
and yes,
Oh.
and it has Donald Pleasance is Satan. Or
Yeah.
whatever manifestation it is he takes to tempt Jesus, I guess.
He takes the form of Donald Pleasance.
Yes, and Telly Savalas is Pontius Pilate.
Oh yeah, I can see that. That would work.
Okay. So that was first question you didn't get, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry.
Okay, this one I think you'll get. It's a bit easier. Okay, so Sam Mendes, current Bond director.
Mm-hmm.
He is, of course, English.
Yes.
But before him, who was the last Bond director who was born in England?
Who was born in England?
Yeah, don't use English. You're going to work backwards.
That must be John Glenn?
John Glenn?
Yes.
What did he do?
He did For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy, A View to a Kill, The Living Daylights, License to Kill.
It's Michael Apted.
It is, Saul is correct. His research skills is quicker than your mind. There you go.
Oh.
It is Michael Apted.
So 1-0. I'm beating Calvin.
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
Because then you got, what is it, Lee Tamahori, he's from New Zealand as well.
Yeah, and Mark Forster is some kind of European.
German.
Yeah, he's from West Germany. Yeah, he's born. Okay, so 1-0 to Saul.
No. This wasn't even supposed to be a competition, but
It is that.
Now, there's no way Saul will get this unless he can, again, beat you with his Googling skills.
okay. Cool.
Which cinematographer has made the most Bond films?
Ooh.
It's either Alan Hume or Ted Moore.
Would you like to have a crack at which one to pick?
Ted Moore did a lot of the early ones, didn't he? So I'm going to go for him, Ted Moore.
I know the answer.
Ted Moore is the correct answer.
Yes. Come
Yeah,
on.
he did.
Just beat me.
I couldn't tell you which ones he did.
He did
but-
7, basically 7
Oh.
out of the first 9, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Doctor No, From Russian with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, The Man with the Golden Gun. Nice easy one, this. Which British comedian wrote the Young Bond novels?
Oh, it's Charlie Hickson.
Charlie Hickson is correct. Sol takes the lead again.
I actually knew that one,
Biased. This is a
Calvin.
biased quiz.
Why?
I didn't know Charlie
Okay.
Hickson was a comedian.
Yeah.
What did you think? It was a bit harsh.
An author.
No,
Well, he's in the
Fast show
Fast Show
stuff.
and
He's
everything Paul Whitehouse has done.
Okay.
In 1967, Eon Productions made a television special to promote You Only Live Twice.
Oh, yes.
It featured Miss Moneypenny and Q.
Yes.
What was the name of that special?
Welcome to Japan, Mr. Bond.
Is the correct answer.
Yes.
Saul, this one is a guess a number question, so
Ooh,
you
yes.
might get it. Okay.
28.
No, come on now. I'll have to accept your first answer. It's whoever's closest to. Goldfinger won the Bond franchise its first Oscar, but how many has it won in total?
The franchise.
6.
The franchise. Calvin's gone for 6. Sol, would you like to go for another answer? We'll go closest winner.
I'll go for 7.
The correct answer is 5.
Shit. Wrong
Damn
side.
it, so close. Oh, no, wait, I
It's
win.
got. Yes, you were closest. Sound effects for Goldfinger, visual
Yeah.
effects for Thunderball,
Thunderball.
sound editing and original song for Skyfall, and then original song for Spectre.
Yes.
So there was a big gap of 40 years between them. Okay, Ian Fleming said that his envision of Bond should look like a particular American musician, and he
Oh.
specifically named him in
I've
2
heard
of the
this.
novels.
Hoagie Carmichael.
It's Hoagie Carmichael.
Yes.
Oh, your reputation is still just about intact.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah, you did all right there.
That was all right. Phew. God.
All right, so yeah, pictures. Alan, follow through on your notes.
I was struggling to figure this out actually, because to go kind of a straight parody is like, because Goldfinger's such an obvious example of Bond, it's been parodied. I was thinking I was trying to think of what was politically relevant at the time. You got the Cold War, which they did in Doctor No, and it was obviously all there. Anyway, I couldn't do anything, so basically I went with something stupid instead. So this is basically Bond does Hawaii, but I've tried to make it as sort of legitimate as possible. So first, of course, you need an opening sequence that's got nothing to do with the rest of the film.
Quite.
So we open to see Bond dressed as a nun. And he uses this clever disguise to infiltrate an enemy stronghold, and he plants a bomb in the chapel. And once he's done this, he removes the habit to reveal a perfectly pressed tuxedo, and then goes and joins a party that he's overdressed for. So when the bomb goes off, everyone panics and runs away. Bond shags a nun. This is all very quick, obviously, because it's just the opening sequence. He gets into hand-to-hand combat with a priest. And this ends somehow with the priest being impaled on a crucifix.
Good.
And Bond says, "I hope I didn't make you cross." And then he walks away as if he hadn't just murdered a man. After this, he's finished his mission, so Bond gets sent on holiday to Hawaii. But it is unseasonably cold. Everyone's complaining about the lack of sun. Obviously, this is bad for tourist business. But there's one person who's doing quite well out of it, a local entrepreneur named David Tanningwell, who owns a global chain of tanning salons. Because of the lack of sunshine, his business is doing very well. And we see him promoting his stores at events and stuff like that. And we'll have to sort of drop him in throughout, because obviously he's building up to be the villain. He's a Hawaiian character, but in the tradition of the Bond films, he'll be played by a Japanese man and dubbed by an English actor doing an American accent.
Oh, you've nailed these early Bond films, Alan.
Because Odd Job was Hawaiian, wasn't he? Oh, sorry, the guy who played Odd Job, who was generally known as Odd Job for the rest of his life.
So, Harold Sakata?
It said he was Hawaiian, but of Japanese descent. But not Korean, which is the character is supposed to be. He looks like he's Fijian or something like that, like a big Samoan, like that sort of South Pacific guy. Anyway, standard Bond shenanigans early on the film. He shags one of the maids at the hotel. Okay, we then get introduced to our other main character. She's going to be the primary Bond girl. So Bond actually, first we introduce her, he overhears her talking to some fellow guests. He discovers that her name is Jessica Fletcher. She's a novelist and mystery writer from Maine.
Played by
Angela Lansbury. Now, I checked this. Angela Lansbury is almost exactly the same age as Honor Blackman. So I think we'll just about get away with it. She's a bit old to be a
But I think in the early 60s, Honor Blackman was playing Lawrence Harvey's mum in The Manchurian Candidate, and not the sexy pussy galore.
Just because Angela Lansbury's looked 65 for the last 50 years doesn't mean she can't be a Bond girl. Jessica's nephew runs a factory in the neighbourhood, and it's thought that the smog and industrial pollution being pumped out of the factory is what's causing the lack of sunlight. And so Jessica's come over to sort of meddle with things and investigate, because her nephew's being accused of a crime that she thinks he didn't commit. I'm trying to. This is basically now a big budget take on Murder, She Wrote, so we'll just sort of play by their rules. So, for example, every now and then the camera will just obviously focus in on an inanimate object and then linger on it for far too long, and then it's a bit like Q introducing things at the beginning. You know, it's got to play a big part later on. Bond and Jessica Fletcher, they get talking, they end up having sex. Bond. There you go. Bond's on holiday, so he's bored. So he agrees to help her investigate this whole thing, this pollution thing. Blah, blah, blah. We get some action scenes. They try to dig up information. Some people from the local government are trying to stop them. Someone tries to kill them. All this stuff. Okay, now I need to introduce here something that will play off later. And in the film, you'd have to try and sort of play it off quite subtly. But we're not worried about setting things up in a really obvious way because it's Bond. So now Jessica explains that she is a member of the Mystery Writers of America Association, which is just a general club for mystery writers, and their symbol is a magnifying glass, like Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. And so she has this little pendant necklace thing that is a small magnifying glass, and so she gives this to Bond as like a token of her affection. Okay, forget about that because maybe it'll pay off later, maybe it won't. Okay, so. Getting to the end of the film. Okay, they finally get their hands on some sort of evidence that demonstrates Jessica's nephew is perfectly fine. He's operating within normal limits for a 1960s industrial plant, which I'm sure was very well maintained. So the lack of sunshine has to be caused by something else. Now we need some sort of very obvious clue that turns Jessica onto this David tanning well, and they figure out that he's the one behind it all. But, so at this point, they're kidnapped by Tanningwell's goons. Now, I needed...
Sorry, just the name.
I needed something like an original idea for his henchmen, like that would be, kind of cool and quirky, like Oddjob and all that. So I thought, because he's all about tanning, we could make them really orange. But then to make them a bit odd, we could give them all green hair. And then maybe they're all dwarves as well. So that's like his little army, just this bunch of dwarves. Okay, so we have for the ending where we have to have Tanningwell unnecessarily explaining his plan in great detail, but we have Bond, instead of like the laser beam up his jaffers, he's got Bond naked. He's strapped into a chair with tanning lamps pointed at him. He's going to tan him to death. He's going to tan him to death, yes.
It's like the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Yeah, that's a reference that I'm familiar with. Go on. So we have Bond strapped naked to a chair with tanning lamps pointed at him. Tanningwell explains his plot in great detail, and it turns out that his evil scheme is to block out the sun so that people have to pay to use his global chain of tanning salons in order to not get rickets. He's been doing this by having his private fleet of aeroplanes flying around and depositing chemicals into the atmosphere. And it's sort of generally building up this kind of smog. So then Tanningwell walks away, leaves Bond alone, safe in the knowledge that nothing could possibly go wrong, and his death will go forward without a hitch. So now Bond has to escape. So a bit of mild panic. He's trying to figure it all out. He's sort of, struggling to get out. Realises he's wearing a magnifying glass necklace. Now he manages to sort of pull it out, work it out into his mouth, where he uses it to concentrate the tanning rays into a laser beam, which he uses to cut the ropes or whatever it is that's holding him. So then he gets away, he rescues Jessica, who, I don't know, she's been in prison somewhere, we don't worry about her. He just goes and rescues her, they escape. But then just before they escape, they sneak into Tanningwell's personal aeroplane and they tamper with something. You don't really know what he's doing, but Bond's just like, "Oh, I'll just sort this out, don't worry about this, darling." and then they run away. So they've escaped, but it looks as if Tanningwell's got away. Because once he realises Bond's escaped and the plan's all falling apart, he runs away. He flees in his private jet. But as he flies away, he decides to give like one last fuck you to the world. He's going to dump all the chemicals he's got in his plane. He's going to carry on releasing them into the atmosphere. But when he presses the button to release the gas, it all gets released into the cockpit and it suffocates him and then crashes into the ocean. And that's the end of the villain. And then that one quick final scene. You got to have Bond, obviously, having sex at the end. So the final scene, Bond and Jessica are in bed, Bond gets up, opens the curtains, and the sunlight just blazes in. It's like, oh, it almost blinds him. So he immediately shuts the curtains and says, "Oh, let's just stay indoors, shall we, Hin?" And then they have sex again. And the camera slowly pans upwards, and then the theme music kicks in.
Oh. I'm enjoying your Bond pictures, Alan. I really enjoyed the From Russia with Love one as well. I think you really embrace the theme
I do like
put a comedic twist on it. Shall I crack on immediately with mine? Okay, because mine is quite short. It's not really a sequel so much as it's a alternate reality thing that's sort of... Because watching the film again, and we've kind of covered it earlier on, how confusing it is as to who is telling who what in the final plot, the final scheme at Fort Knox, for Felix's guys to get involved and that sort of thing. It's all a little bit sort of like, well, wait, who did Pussy Galore tell them? So inspired by that confusion, I'm going to start at the very end of the film. Bond, Oddjob, and Kish are being taken into Fort Knox with the bomb, and the American military, as it is in the film, they stop Goldfinger and all this kind of stuff. But the vault is closed, and Bond and Oddjob are having a fight and whatever. Bond doesn't kill Oddjob, but he incapacitates him. Kish is still, after Oddjob throws him off the end. He's alive, but just his legs are broken now. His back's broken, so he can't move. Bond gets to the bomb. He opens it up, and there's actually no bomb in there at all. And because in the midst of all the confusion that's been going on with people telling who what, the actual bomb itself was left outside of Fort Knox because Pussy thought that she was supposed to do that, and then the CIA were going to go and get the real bomb. So the real bomb goes off outside Fort Knox, and
no, and then they can't come out.
Yes, so
yes.
we have a what's it called, a bottle scenario, with Bond, Oddjob, and Kish trapped in Fort Knox.
I don't want to get ahead of you here, Calvin, but I assume they learn to live together in peace. And,
Oh, well, you just got right ahead of me there, haven't you?
I mean, rather than them, is it like a Lord of the Flies situation where they have to fight each other in tribes?
Yeah, that'd be great.
The three of them start a civilization.
One each.
So, well, you've kind of jumped ahead of me here. The three of them sort of learn to, live with each other, and they live for quite some time in Fort Knox, and eventually driven...
Are they having any communication with the outside world, or
no?
Do they know they can't get out, or what?
They've heard what has happened outside, and because the bomb isn't in there with them, Bond presumes that he understands what has taken place.
Right.
So Oddjob no longer has anything to fight for now that Goldfinger's dead. So he has a real crisis of conscience. Bond has to...
Does Bond shag him?
That's a good point.
Well...
I mean, prison rules, it doesn't count.
If you stop getting ahead of me, my pitch, maybe these punchlines would work better.
Sorry.
So yeah, the three of them, Bond manages to, because Oddjob threw Kish off the balcony, he manages to sort of appeal to Oddjob's humanity by making him look at what he's done. This poor man is now crippled because of his actions. There are plenty of scenes of them going mad with the gold that's around them and bonding in general. And the three of them do end up in a throuple, as I believe it's called these days. A three-way relationship between the three of them. And they think, God, well, we're going to be spending the rest of our days in here when the very end of the film, skipping ahead, bearing in mind this is a character piece, so there's going to be lots of scenes of them, chatting and whatnot. So there's someone's...
Does Oddjob learn to speak?
He learns to say sorry to Kish, and that's the only word of dialogue he speaks, and that is the poetic, lovely moment before they at the very end of the film, they look up to the door and someone is making their way in, like cutting their way through the however inch steel whatever door it is, and someone walks in a hazmat suit, and she takes off the helmet, and it's Moneypenny, and she has come to save Bond from. But then she walks in on this bizarre scene, and yeah, that's how we end the film.
So she walks in there in flagrante. They're all at it.
No, it's a tender moment because
okay.
Oddjob has said sorry. It's the climax of the film.
So, of course, it's an emotional climax.
Yes, quite.
I like the idea of when they're stuck in there, that like Bond will be having withdrawal for the fags and booze. It'll probably be quite tetchy, and then he'll get really sexually frustrated, and then we'll have these other two characters that we don't know at all, and so we have to make up some characteristics for them. So how long will they be stuck in this thing?
I think, how long would it take for like the hoo-ha to die down and Moneypenny to gain access to? I'm thinking a few weeks.
I think they need to be in there at least 7 years.
I think it should be a matter of years
to create any kind of emotional.
It should be a matter of years, and
when
by the time they get out, apes have taken over the earth.
Oh, that'd have been better, wouldn't it? If Moneypenny had taken a hazmat and it was like an ape, Miss Moneypenny.
No, that'd be good, right? Because if they were in there for like 30 years, then when they come out, you have then a whole other film where they have to adjust to modern life, where he's not allowed to slap girls on the arse and stuff like that.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be
really good.
You set up your own sequel.
Hey, that's a good segue into mine, actually, because that's not a million miles away from my pitch.
Take it away.
Yeah, so
this is Bond just slapping girls on the arse for 97 minutes.
So yeah, it's a direct sequel to Goldfinger. We meet up with Bond. The year is 2012, and James Bond is now 82 years old. Sean Connery is reprising the role once more, one final time.
Is this an official production, or is it where someone's got the rights to one book?
This is like the bookend to those classic films.
Wait, so this is 2012. This is smack bang in the middle of Daniel Craig's contract. So they've actually paid off Daniel Craig to bring back Sean Connery.
Yeah.
I think it'd be worth it.
Just I mean, we can imagine this as a world where no films were made between Goldfinger and 2016. It's not set in the future. It's set 4 years ago. All right.
Right.
Now,
is this is this an 82-year-old man has to parachute into the Olympics? And then he slaps her on the arse. Is that where this is going?
That would have been good. Slapping the Queen. The national
only with an open hand.
No, he's it's Bond. He's an old man now. He's watching a news report about the Metropolitan Police's launch of Operation U-Tree. He's somber and stern.
Oh no! Oh dear! How old are those Bond girls?
Well, yeah. He is. He's somber and stern. He switches the TV off.
He's sweating.
He moves to the fireplace, where he places a few blocks of wood over a firelighter and sets the corner burning with a match and leaves the room. He heads upstairs to his bedroom. He reaches under the bed and pulls out a shoebox. It's full of women's underwear. He roots through them, remembering his former glories, before settling on a noticeably ripped pair. He picks it up, holds it to his nose, and inhales deeply. He then sighs and places them back in the box and takes them downstairs. He places the box in the fireplace, then walks and sits down in his armchair watching them burn. The camera moves down behind the fire, watching him watching the fireplace until it appears as though he himself is engulfed in flames. And then we have like an opening title sequence and a song.
What's the title?
Gold things. I don't know. You tell me afterwards. I don't know.
Okay.
So we join him. He's walking his dog. I think Bond.
Sorry, when is this?
After the fire, the next day. I suppose.
Okay.
Or maybe later that same day.
Okay.
He's walking his dog. His dog's a corgi. I've decided. He seems like that sort of.
Right.
He stole it from the
No,
Queen.
he just seems like someone who'd like have a corgi to try and impress the Queen, because like he's probably met her a couple of times, and he's it's a grim day, but the park is relatively busy. He stops by the children's play area and watches sternly. His dog does its business. He bags it up and he moves on. He sees a newspaper stand on his walk home. The headlines cover some new suspects in the investigation. Bond takes it in and continues walking. On his way home, he sees a man with a camera lurking outside his home and turns around, instead walking down various side streets and calling upon another house. Who else should answer but Moneypenny? James?
Oh.
Moneypenny. She invites him in. They sit down to tea. Sorry, it's from a bag. I don't keep loose leaf Earl Grey. No, it's fine. It's nice. Thank you. They sit and make stilted chat. Moneypenny? Yes. They won't go after us, will they? Us double O's. We were fully licensed. You were only licensed to kill, James. The government was always willing to stretch that within reason, but I don't know, James. So my problem is that I let them all live, and then he storms out. Moneypenny looks deflated at the
Is this Bond played by Gordon Brown?
Moneypenny looks deflated at the half-drunk tea. She begins clearing the table. Bond heads back to his home with the dog, but there's now a crowd of people waiting, cameras, police. They see him, but Bond picks up his dog and tries to make his way through the crowd. They harass him, and the police try to reach him as he pushes through, shouting, "I need to feed my dog. I need to feed my dog." He falls down on his step, and the crowd gasps. 2 police officers slowly make their way to him, and a third to the dog. They help him up and walk him to the car. Fade to black. It turns out that Pussy Galore is the first of a string of women who have come forth with stories of Bond and intention to push charges against him for a series of sexual assaults he carried out against them decades ago. The police already have a number of complaints on their books that are now being reinvestigated. The rest of the film is a courtroom drama. They wheel out all of Bond's old villains, women and friends to testify about him, going through his life. His lawyer tries to make the case that it was a different time and that the man deserves leniency for saving the world. The prosecution argues that he abused a position of power and sullied the good name of his organisation. They claim that it would be one thing if it was an isolated incident, but it's a systematic series of offences that have occurred every couple of years or so, depending on various copyright issues. Ultimately, Moneypenny is called into his defence as a character witness, and she talks about her relationship with Bond and tries to speak about the good times they've had and all the good that he's done for the world. But she begins to struggle as she speaks of their relationship together personally, and as she looks at some of the women sat in the court bringing charges against him. She ultimately breaks down in tears as she admits that she's heard the stories and seen the evidence, and she's always turned a blind eye because of the animosity that she felt towards those other women that James would touch. Why would he touch them? Why would he never touch her? Bond obviously loses the case and is found guilty of 124 counts of sexual assault spanning from the 60s through to the end of the 70s. He's sentenced to the maximum punishment you could receive for his offences at the time that he committed them, which is 2 years in prison. The end.
Oh.
2 years in prison for 124 counts. Is that a cumulative total?
In the 60s, yeah.
The maximum sentence is 2.5 days
Yeah.
in prison. This is interesting. We should go through the films and figure out how many cases of sexual assault we can put towards
We
Bond.
should start keeping a track of it now. Yeah.
So,
I really enjoyed that, Sol. I thought you delivered that very well.
It was beautiful.
I mean, have you seen that film where Ian McKellen plays like a really old Sherlock Holmes? That seems like your bag, Calvin.
Oh no, I've not seen that. No.
It is Ian
No.
McKellen,
What does
isn't
he?
it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Holmes, I think it's called.
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I imagine this would be something like that, except darker. But just, the idea of an aged character.
Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drawing on their life. And, the courtroom stuff, it could be like the finale of Seinfeld. Where you get everyone back for one final...
Yeah, you get to have all the Bond girls back to testify.
Exactly. It'd be great.
And they, we'd have to go to one of the conventions and round them up.
Honey Child Rider could be there talking about how she was into it, but she wasn't old enough.
She was 15.
Exactly.
Thanks for listening to Diminishing Returns. If you'd like to join in the conversation with us about Goldfinger, or indeed any of the other movies we previously covered on the show, then please head over to facebook.com/Diminishing Returns Pod, and we're also on Twitter, @DimReturnsPod. If you'd like to show your support for this podcast, then please rate and or review us on iTunes. We always love making these shows, and we want to share them with as many people as possible, so feel free to recommend us to a friend, and just spread the word of this podcast, because we really want to reach as many people as possible and hopefully entertain and amuse as many people as possible. Please join us again next week as we take our first foray into the world of Marvel by going back to where that cinematic universe franchise all started, with Iron Man.